Welcome to another episode of Purpose Today with Dr. April Dobson. I'm your host, and I'm very excited about a brand new topic that we're discussing today, purpose aligned career search. And if you are a professional or an entrepreneur who is seeking opportunities or want to grow in your career or your business while you remain aligned with your purpose, then you want to stay tuned for this very special episode. We're going to talk about strategies that you can implement today that will help you to attract the type of opportunities that align with your purpose, that will allow you to do what you love and continue to grow and progress. And if you're an entrepreneur, we'll talk about strategies that you can utilize to attract clients and attract contracts. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back after these special sponsorship messages with a new episode titled Purpose Aligned Career Search. And I want you to think about what is the legacy that you want to leave in your life and your career. And so we'll be back after these sponsorship messages. And if you have comments, questions throughout today's episode, type them in the chat. Love to answer those questions for you. So we'll be right back right after these messages.
Dreaming of writing a book, launching a podcast, or creating a digital course? Ready to finally align your career, creativity, and impact? The Purpose Aligned Life Premium Coaching Cohort is here to help you turn purpose into reality. You'll receive tailored services, a personalized one-on-one assessment, 10 weekly group sessions, and exclusive strategy session, all for your desired transformation.
And welcome back to Purpose Today. So I'm very excited to get into this special episode as we talk about purpose aligned career search. And I really want you to think about, what is the legacy that you want to leave in your career? What is the legacy that you want to leave for your life? And I see some of you are already putting comments in the chat. I see Kelly Grant has indicated that you're so excited to be here for another inspiring episode. So thank you for tuning in, Kelly, and thank you so much for that positive feedback. And thank you, Jack. Happy Thursday to you as well. And I'm also looking forward to sharing with you how purpose can shape careers. And I do appreciate all of you for tuning in. Had a few technical challenges, and so glad that I can be with you. So one of the things that's important when you want to ensure that your career is purpose aligned is you want to ensure that you've identified first what your purpose is. And I do encourage all of you, and I challenge all of you to rise to purpose. And we're going to talk about that acronym tonight. Rising to purpose is recognizing that our purpose, what our God-given purpose is, and we do that by going to our Creator. And then we want to submit to that purpose that He has for us, and then we want to execute everything that we execute based on that purpose and doing things that align with that. And with that, we're going to have so many desires in our heart. So now I want to get into some things that you can do practically once you've, risen to your purpose, some things that you can do practically that will help you in your career. And so one of the things that's really important, and I see this all the time with professionals, is they take the opportunity to highlight what they've done, and they find themselves doing it not only in their resume, but they're highlighting what they've done in their career in their LinkedIn profile. And often what happens with that is it starts a cycle to keep the person doing the same thing that they've always done. So if you want to be able to align with purpose and you're doing something and you've done something historically that doesn't align with your purpose, simply taking the expertise that you have and taking the skills that you have that are based on what you've done in the past, but not necessarily in the direction that you're desiring to do. So what I want to encourage you to do when you're wanting to ensure that your career search and your career progression is purpose aligned, what you sure to do is want to identify the skills, the expertise, the experience, all your achievements that you have that's aligned with your purpose and that's related to the direction that you're going in, the goals that you have. And when you look at that lens, from that lens, then you're able to really focus on what is important for where you're going. So once you've done that, and I think a great way to do it, since most people already have a resume, most people already have a LinkedIn profile, I encourage you to take time to just sit down for a moment, take a look at your resume, use a highlighter to highlight the skills, the experience, the achievements that you have that are aligned with your purpose and that also coincide or are beneficial for the goals that you have for yourself. And when you do that first, then you can go back and analyze whether or not everything else that you didn't highlight in some way is transferable to the direction that you're desiring to go in. Now, I know that some of you are putting things in the chat, and hello, Oliver, I see you said hello. And I see Anita says, what legacy do I truly want to leave? So you do want to ask yourself that question. And when you're asking yourself the question of the legacy that you truly want to leave, and you are clear on the goals that you have related to the legacy that you want to leave, related to the direction you desire to go in, now you want to really zone in on what will be necessary. I know that sometimes people are able to go directly from what they're doing into their purpose aligned career if they're not already purpose aligned, and sometimes people will need connectors. So I want to walk you practically through this process in succession, and I want to give you the scenarios based on whether or not you already have something in your experience, in your achievements, in your skills that will allow you to directly go into what you're desiring to go into. And I want to talk about what you would do if there's a gap. So I want to also take a moment, because currently I have all the comments that are popping in and I wasn't showing them initially on the screen. So I just added that so that you can see it. So what I want you to do, once you've highlighted everything, that was your first step. The second step is to see if the things that you did not highlight, if there's something that's transferable. So maybe it's not an exact necessity for what you're doing, but at least it's transferable into what you would desire to do. I'll give you an example practically of just some people who I've worked with over the years. I had someone who was in the military, served in the military for over 20 years, and the majority of that time in the military was similar to the majority of my time in the military, a career that dealt with national security and intel. And he did not have a desire to stay in intel, and he didn't have a desire to do the exact same thing that he was already doing, but I was able to give him a strategy to do what he wanted to do what felt purpose aligned and something that he loved doing. And so he noticed that throughout the 20 years in the military, some of the things that he really enjoyed was oversight and management of people and processes. And so what he was able to do is go back through all of the experience and see what was relevant for that shift that he wanted to make in his career. So while everything that he did wasn't necessary to highlight, there was somewhere between 60 and 70% of what he had done that was relevant to what he wanted to shift into. So he was able to shift careers, make a pivot post-military, and then within 2 years of shifting careers was promoted again and far exceeded his salary in the military. In fact, he over doubled initially And then with the promotion, by the time that he had taken the promotion and all of the bonuses and benefits, he was over 3 times the salary that he was making. And as a warrant officer. So I encourage you to take the time to take those first 2 steps. And then after you've done that, I want to give the scenario for people who have the gap, and then I want to give the scenario for people who have a direct transition into what they desire based on already having what's necessary. And I see I have some questions, so I want to pause for a moment and address some of the questions that you all have in the chat. So one of the questions that I see in the chat, and I'm trying to go in order of the way you asked Paula asked today one of the is for me, I their purpose. I encountered a few people, and I've encountered people who have told me circumstances, and in that career, they know that the career isn't necessarily aligned. They feel like they need to keep doing it because their tenure. And because they feel like they have to keep doing it, and because they feel like they're stuck, then having strategies to help them to make the pivot and make the transition is what is necessary. And so, another reason that I'm covering this conversation is I just was on a panel as one of the keynotes on a panel at Krobo Girls Senior High School in Ghana, and there were several other professionals on the panel with me. We had attorneys, a medical doctor, engineers. There were a variety of experts who had insights to share with over 2,500 students who we spoke with. And in the questions that we had, several of the students actually expressed having expectations that weren't necessarily what they wanted to do. So I wanted to cover this topic to ensure that any of the viewers who are watching this live, or any of the viewers who come back and view this in the future, once the live ends, it'll still be available on YouTube and a few other platforms. You actually have practical strategies that you can utilize so that you don't have to stay in a place that no longer serves you. You don't have to stay in a place that doesn't align with your purpose. So great question, Paul. I really do appreciate you asking that question. And I want to get to a couple other questions before I continue giving the action steps for people who have the direct transition who have a gap. So I see Maria says decision. Yes, Maria, excellent question. The reason help you to ensure when you take those moments to reflect and really assess whether or not your activities from that day, your decisions from that day, whether or not those decisions were in alignment with your purpose, whether or not those decisions that you made in that day were going in the direction that you've established that you desire to go in. It helps you to get back on track if you're not on track. It helps you to course correct immediately instead of having days, months, years of being out of alignment. And so when you discover that there's something that you're doing that's not in alignment, and you make that reflection each day, after each day, and you're able to make that assessment, then you can move forward knowing that you don't have to continue to do the things that are not aligned. So, excellent question, Maria. I really appreciate you asking that. I also see that there's a comment from Kathy, amazing topic. Looking forward to learning something I can apply immediately. So, thank you so much, Kathy. Thrive Time shows us what's the biggest mistake people make when searching for a new career. The biggest mistake that people make when searching for a new career is that they make the mistake of assuming that they have to do something based on the experience that they have instead of making the decision to align with their purpose. It's one of the greatest mistakes that people can make. And so I encourage you to make the assessment now as you're watching this. I want you to take out a pen and paper if you haven't already done that, or your iPad or something you can take notes on. And I want you to write down what is the legacy that you want to leave in your career, in your life. What's the legacy that you want to leave? And, challenge yourself as you're continuing to align with your purpose, that you are, making a concerted effort to leave the legacy that you're desiring to leave, and that you're not going through life, you're not going through your career haphazardly, but you're being intentional and you're being purposeful with your efforts. Thank you so much, Matthew, for that compliment. I see you're saying this is such an inspiring topic. I see your question, how did you personally discover your purpose and align it with your career? So great question. Thank you so very much for that. So while I was in the military, I was in Intel, and I definitely was not aligned with my purpose. Thankfully, nothing was wasted. And God just began to reveal some things to me. And as I, submitted and yielded, he continued to reveal, more and more things. So I saw that I was out of alignment, and I thankfully, God was able to give me some wisdom and really show me what my purpose was. And I discovered over the years, and I'm going to go back a little bit. I discovered over the years that everything that I did wasn't wasted. So throughout my time in the military, nothing was wasted. Even prior to joining the military, I was in radio broadcasting for 4 years. That wasn't wasted. So I want to say for anyone who may not be in alignment, know that every experience that you've had, oftentimes it's something that you can still use, and it's not something that goes to waste. There's a way oftentimes that something can be used, even if it's a total career shift. And I can even see just during the that I was in national security and in intel, I was required to do a lot of briefings, and that required a lot of public speaking. It required a lot of briefing senior leaders. And so I use those communication skills even today with the podcast, with Purpose Today Global. So ultimately, I think about the scripture that says, many are the plans in a man's heart, but it's the Lord's purpose that will prevail. And so my encouragement to everyone is to take time to, pray so that your purpose can be revealed to you. But what I want to also say to people is oftentimes purpose, there are hints to purpose by the deep desires that you have that just don't go away. There's often insights on your purpose by the things in the world that you see that bother you, that make you inclined to do something about it, and you feel like somebody has to do something about this. So oftentimes, our purpose, there's hints to our purpose in a lot of different, in a lot of different ways. And the other thing to do, and something that kind of is sort of taught, that children are led in like another direction, because parents will often say, well, you should do this, or teachers will say, well, you should do this. And I just encourage everyone to lean into those deep desires that you have that don't go away. Lean into the things that bother you, the things that you feel there needs to be a solution that you want to solve. Lean into those things. I see Jason has said, I love the reminder that success isn't only about titles, it's about fulfillment. Absolutely. When you are aligned with your purpose, you're often fulfilled. And that's really when you can have that fulfillment in your career, do what you love in your business or career, then you have a feeling of that you do have that sense of fulfillment, and you also are excited about what you're doing. No one has to really motivate you or prime you to do what it is that you're doing. You have a joy about doing it. So there's that variance there. And thank you so much, Rochelle, for that compliment. I see you're saying that Dr. April explains complex ideas in such an easy to understand way. So thank you so much, Rochelle, for that compliment, and thank you for tuning in. Mike has a question. What's the biggest mistake people make in their career search? Which I did answer that. Again, thinking that you have to do something that you've always done and not aligning with purpose is the biggest mistake. David says, how can someone tell if they're truly aligned with their purpose? David, excellent question. Often when you have alignment with your purpose, there is a joy and a peace about what you're doing. Even if you have something that can be taxing or what can be considered a stressful career, you have a joy in what you do. You have a love in what you do, and you have a sense of fulfillment. And oftentimes when we're aligned with our purpose, we have a level of a different type of success, right? You have success outwardly and inwardly. You have that peace and joy that I talked about. You really are excited about what you do. And so usually those are indicators that you're aligned, right? You are at peace about what you're doing. You enjoy the impact that you are making, you feel like things are connected, right? You don't feel as though something is missing, right? So excellent question, David. Todd says, how do you know you're on the right career path? And I think that really relates to the question that David asked. You know, when you are on the right career path, you do have that sense of fulfillment. You have that sense of joy and peace with what you're doing, even if it's something, like I said, that can be considered stressful or even a bit stressful. There's this fulfillment that you get, and you have um, you want to progress. You're able engagement, and thank you for these wonderful questions and feedback that you're providing. Thank you, Kelly, for sharing that you really appreciate all the practical advice that's being shared today. I see Mac, thank you so much for sharing that you appreciate that this conversation is encouraging reflection instead of, rushing important decisions. I believe that it is important to reflect. It's important to take the time to assess where you are, assess what's before you, assess where you're heading. And that's going to ensure that you can make the decisions that you make and information to make your decisions. So Dirk says, what's the first action someone should take after this live? So great question, Dirk. So if you have not already written down yet, if you haven't taken the time to highlight in your resume or print what's in your, or copy and paste what's in your LinkedIn profile into a Word document and highlight the areas that are related to the direction that you desire to go in, as it relates to, your purpose aligned outcomes for your career or for your business. That's the first step, is highlighting the things that align. And then secondarily, looking at the things that you didn't highlight to see if anything is transferable for the direction that you're going in. That's the first thing. And once you've done that, then the next step would be to revise the resume and revise the LinkedIn profile to ensure that you are highlighting and maximizing the things that you highlighted, and that you're showing achievements from a qualitative and quantitative standpoint in those areas. And then the things that are transferable that you can still use, you can keep those as well. But then everything else, you'll want to remove it. And then if there's any gaps, and this is where I get into the differences between people who already have what's necessary and people who have gaps. So let's just say, you're in a role, you're aligned with purpose, but you know that it's time for you to progress into something else. But you want to remain purpose aligned. I actually had a prior client who was ready to go into a formal leadership role within her industry. She had already been in leadership in prior career experiences, but in this particular industry, she had not. And so, I do believe it's great to have coaches and mentors who will help to guide you to get from where you are to where you desire to be. So basically, we sat down, we talked about what that looked like for her. What were the elements that were important? And then once we did that, we were able to actually come up with some possible career options and directions based on the parameters that she had. And then with that, we worked to revise her resume. We did some recommendations regarding her LinkedIn profile. And we also took the time to do some interview coaching for the direction that she was heading in, right? And within a very short period of time, in less than a month, she landed a new role that was aligned with what she desired in leadership in the new industry. And she is thoroughly enjoying what she's doing now and excited that she did that. So it's important to ensure that you're able to identify what you're going to need and what you're not going to need. And then the other thing is, if you're in a situation where there's a gap, maybe something is completely different from what you did and there's not enough achievements, experience, and skills, and there's such a gap that you're going to need to close that gap, then your approach might be a bit different, right? So let me just use for an example. Let's just say, for instance, you for the last 10 plus years have been in a career that is related to project management. That's what you've done for the last 10 years. And you are wanting to pivot your vision. That is a significant difference, right? But there may be some things from project management that are relevant for healthcare administration, right? Assume that none of that project management experience had anything to do with healthcare. There was nothing related to wellness, right? So maybe you need exposure with the health in order to make the pivot, right? So perhaps because you have the project management expertise, you want to highlight everything that's necessary that you have in your experience that you can use for the healthcare administration. So maybe it might be necessary to volunteer at organizations that deal with healthcare in some way. I know the Department of Veterans Affairs allows people to volunteer at the VA. You could potentially, depending on the type of company you work for, if they have something that's even remotely relevant, you could perhaps do a rotation or something of that sort. You could consider taking on maybe a chief of staff role in a healthcare organization, because that project management and a chief of staff, there's some cross-functional things that are relevant. So that's something that someone could do if there is a gap. There may be some instances that you might need a certification, or you may need to take a formal degree program, but in many instances you don't need to, because there's a way that you can make a transition by using an indirect approach like the example that I just gave. So those are the two variances in how you would approach it if you have the direct expertise, and everything that is needed, that you already have that in your experience in some way, your achievements, your education. And then if there is a gap, then you would use something similar to the approach that I mentioned, but definitely sit down and talk to a mentor or a coach who can help you with a strategy, and they can often save you a lot of time. Now, I'm going to be winding down here. We've had a wonderful discussion. I may not have an opportunity to answer all the questions. If I don't, I'll be posting a short on YouTube in the coming days. I'll be posting some content that you can see. But I see there's a question from Russ. What role does resilience play when pursuing purpose-aligned opportunities? Great question, Russ. It is so important to remain resilient, and it's important to have right mindset. As you think will determine what happens in your life. I do believe, fully believe, the scripture that says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And so, how you see yourself, how you see the world, how you see what is available to you is going to determine what happens. If you have the mindset that you are going to have a purpose aligned career, a purpose aligned life, and that you're going to be intentional about what you're doing, and that opportunities come to you and they find you, then you'll have those opportunities. If you remain, resolute that that the things that you are desiring will, come in your life, and you're taking the necessary actions, I believe it will happen. And so people have a way, resources have a way of finding you when you are purpose aligned. So great, great, great question. And thank you for the compliment, Ryan, that this is a great live stream. Thank you, Todd. You're very welcome. I'm happy to share these valuable insights. Thank you, Clay, for the compliment that today's discussion is a great reminder. I'm not going to get to all of these questions. I'm trying my best. So like I said, I'll be recording a short in the coming days and posting it, or I'll just go live again to answer some of these questions that I did not actually have an opportunity to answer in today's live. I saw another question that I wanted to answer. Daniel said, how can we identify God-given talents more clearly? It's a couple of ways, right? One of the things that you can do is, you can pray and ask God to reveal the talents that you have, that He has given you. Secondarily, I would encourage you to sit down and reflect and think back to when you were a child. Think back to the things that you were doing as a child that you just did, you were able to do. No one had to really spend time extensively teaching you how to do it. And then also think about the things that you even do now in your life that you're able to do with ease without having a lot of necessarily any formal training, but you're just able to do it with ease. Think of those things. And then also another approach that you can use is do a 360. Take time to do a 360 assessment. Ask people who know you very well, what do you think I am naturally, what do you observe that I am naturally gifted in? What do you observe that I have as an innate talent? Oftentimes, we might overlook some things in our lives. I will say, when I was a kid, I used to get in trouble all the time for talking too much. And it was one of the things that I actually was in trouble for quite a bit for talking too much. And even I remember when I was in elementary school, a teacher wrote on my report card, talks too much in class. Now, I was always an honor roll student. And so that talking actually turned out to be a great thing in my life. So I just naturally have been an excellent communicator since I was a kid. So think back on those things from, when you were a child that you just did naturally, right? Those natural gifts that you had and talents that you had as a kid, and what you naturally are able to do with ease even now, things that might be difficult for other people, it's easy for you. And then also doing a 360. So great question. Thank you for asking that, Daniel. So Cody says, how can we build confidence while pursuing our purpose? There are several ways that you can build confidence. One is through positive affirmations. Two is by going ahead and acting on desires that you have that are things that will bring you joy, things that that will be for you will help you to feel fulfilled. Most people talk themselves out of things. But if you go ahead and act on something when you first have the idea, when you first think about it, it gives you more confidence. I also say surround yourself with people, meet people who have achieved what you're desiring to achieve, who are doing what you desire to do. That's going to help you with confidence. There's so much on YouTube now, content that you can listen to that's positive, that will help to build your confidence. For me, I have devotion every day. I read the Bible. That gives me a lot of confidence in knowing who I am and knowing my identity. But those are just some ways that you can build your confidence. But certainly, you want to just act. When you have ideas, when you have things that you're desiring, act on it. So I want to maybe make a transition. How do you recognize when it's time to make a career transition? Great question, Matt Daly. You know that it's time to make a career transition first by having the desire. If you have the desire to make a transition or to grow in your career, having that desire is enough that lets you know that it's time, right? If you feel like you've reached have reached a ceiling, and like you're not growing, you can't continue, you're capped at how you can make an impact where you are. If you're starting to feel apathy with what you're doing, if you've lost the fulfillment and the joy and the zeal behind what you're doing, these are often indicators that it's time for you to shift or make a pivot. And so I encourage you to ensure that you start helping to transition and really have someone who is positioned and trained to succeed you, right? Succession planning is very important. So I want to thank you all for tuning in. I do want to share as we are closing out today, if you are someone who needs to pivot professionally, you're someone who knows that you need to grow in your career, and you need a new resume, you need assistance with that, and you want to have a resume that is purpose aligned, that's going to help you to be able to shift, I encourage you to join me and the Purpose Today Global team on Saturday, the 1st of August, for just 50 minutes. This could be 50 minutes that could change your life for the Resume Rewrites Masterclass. And we are going to give you strategies that will deliver results. So I do encourage you, it's 50 minutes, 55-0, so just under an hour. And that is going to help you to ensure that you have a resume that's going to attract the right opportunities. You have a resume that's properly showing your achievements, your expertise, your education, your skills that are aligned with your desired outcomes as it relates to your purpose and the career and the desired outcomes that you want to have. So you can join us. This is available to a limited number of registrants. And so I encourage you, if you are interested, to go ahead and register. The slots are almost filled. And so if you want to participate, I have dropped that link. I'm dropping it in the chat so that you have it. On all social media. Post to all of them for all the questions, but I do appreciate all of you for tuning in to this new episode of purpose today. Challenges, as some of you know, Saturday. Have a couple of internet connect joining in on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, whichever platform you're joining from. If you haven't hit the subscribe button on YouTube, I do encourage you to subscribe at Dr. April D. Dobson so that you can receive notifications on everything that is released, so that you're able to see the questions that I didn't have an opportunity to answer in the live. I appreciate all of you tuning in on today, and I ask you to stay tuned for another episode of Purpose Today with Dr. April Dobson. We have an additional episode that will be live streaming tomorrow morning at 7:30 Eastern Time, and another episode that will live stream on Monday at 7:30 Eastern Time. And starting this week, 2 episodes of the Purpose Today with Dr. April Dobson podcast each week. And again, I will be answering the other questions. So stay tuned, subscribe so that you can receive the insight on the questions that I did not have an opportunity to answer today. Make it an amazing day, and I hope that you'll tune in tomorrow for another episode of Purpose Today with Dr. April Dobson. Make it an amazing day, and if you're interested in the Purpose Aligned Life group coaching cohort, the next cohort that will be starting August 14th, stay tuned for this next sponsorship message, and make it an amazing day and a phenomenal weekend. Stay purposed today and every day.
Dreaming of writing a book, launching a podcast, or creating a digital course? Ready to finally align your career, creativity, and impact? The Purpose Aligned Life Premium Coaching Cohort is here to help you turn purpose into reality. You'll receive tailored services, a personalized one-on-one assessment, 10 weekly group sessions, and exclusive strategy session, all for your desired transformation.